Hello, hello, welcome. Ready? Oh, sorry, I wasn't sure if you were gonna. Yay, okay. Hello, everyone. Hi, welcome to class. Thank you all for attending part 2 of my 2-part series, the ABCs of the LGBTQs. Today's lecture covers many of the same topics that we discussed last time. Last time was, I had an attempt to gear it more towards children. Did the children come? No, they did not. A couple did, yes, I'm very grateful to the children who did come. But today we get to talk adult to adult about identity, sexuality, gender, pronouns, and go over all of that. I have handed out slips of paper. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please go ahead and write down any questions you have, and we'll turn those in before the Q&A, and I'll just, rapid fire answer those. And then today, since we want to have more of maybe an in-depth conversation, we'll still do a Q&A where we'll pass around the mic. But because this is recorded, we'll stop the recording when we do the Q&A, just in case anyone has any sensitive questions they might want to ask and they don't want it to be recorded. We'll create that safe space together. But without further ado, let's get going. If we could go to the next slide, please. So in today's lesson, we'll discuss sexuality, gender, pronouns, and allyship, and what that means. There's a common misconception that sexuality and gender are the same thing. They are two different things. Now, if you look at your handout, this is something that will sort of ground us while we go through. We have what, I don't know what to call this figure, but there are other versions called like the genderbread person or something like that. This is just the gender person. We have the gender expression, and that is the outside. That's referring to like the whole outer part of the person. Gender identity, which is how we feel in the brain. Then we have orientation, attraction, that's how we feel in the heart. And then sex, that is how our bodies are made. So I went over that very quickly, don't worry. And that's just because this is sort of an anchor for us as we continue through our lesson. So if you have questions now, good. We'll both continue to explore it together. Hopefully. Yay. I'll just take one moment to say how beautiful this experience is from last week. I get to like face you, talk to you, and see my presentation. So thank you so much for everyone who put in all of that work yesterday. This is a lovely experience. Next slide, please. So, before we begin, why language matters? Why are we having this conversation in church today? Language shapes how we see and respect one another. It's okay to not know everything. And remember that language evolves. We don't use the same slang terms that that maybe you grew up with. Things aren't as groovy as they were back in the day. Things evolve, things aren't, as swinging, but they are. The spirit of the words, live on. We're coming up with new language to talk about our experience, to label things that are going on inside of our hearts, inside of our minds. And as we have new experiences, we want to share those experiences with those people around us. And when people share experiences, it can be a very vulnerable thing. And so when somebody is sharing themselves with you, We want to honor that that is maybe a vulnerable thing sometimes. And we want to know the language on how to be respectful, the language on how to be a good neighbor. So that is just my little tidbit on why language matters, why learning these things matter. Next slide, please. Foundations. We have sex, which is biological traits, gender, which is the social identity, gender expression, which is how we show our gender, sexual orientation, who we are attracted to. Each one of these exists on a spectrum, not a binary. Those are two huge words, and you'll hear those a lot, especially in queer spaces. Spectrum and binary. So when we talk about things existing on a spectrum, it means that it's not cut and dry, black and white. Things are much more colorful. And binary means two, right? So there's one side or the other. That would be maybe thinking that you had to be either straight or gay. That would be a binary. Or male or female. That would be a binary. But we know now that these things exist on a spectrum and that we all exist somewhere on this spectrum, even if we identify with the gender that we were assigned at birth, which we get to, I think, on the next slide, please. We don't. So, terms for sexuality. We went over these a little bit, so I'll go pretty quickly, unless anyone has like, whoa, slow down. So, heterosexual, another word for that is straight. Homosexual, another word, two words for that are gay or lesbian. That are people that are attracted to the same sex. Bisexual and pansexual, those are sometimes lumped together. Bi means two, pan means all. So these two together mean more than one. So bisexual people are attracted to more than one gender. Now, within the bisexual community, you'll have people who go, no, bisexual only means two. I'm only attracted to males and females. Even within our own community, there are trans exclusionary people. And we can get more into that conversation. But I just wanted to point that out, that everything is nuanced. And everything that we're exploring in this class today is still being explored by the LGBT community as well at large. So these things are constantly changing. Is that frustrating? Yes. Yes. Oh my goodness, is that frustrating? Yes. I, as a queer person, find myself getting frustrated. But I remind myself that, you know, things are changing and growing. And if it honors somebody's truth, then it's worth the time to learn it, you know? Other terms, asexual, little or no sexual attraction. Aromantic, little or no romantic attraction. That's an interesting distinction. Sexual attraction, romantic attraction. They can be different. So now, there are three different sort of planes that you could identify: gender, sexuality, and your romantic orientation. I don't know much about that. Not gonna lie to you. I'm a hopeless romantic. I don't think that's an identity. Or not one that I should just claim so proudly. But aromantic people, they're not interested in the romance of it. They don't need the dates or the attention. These people maybe just want the practicality of the relationship or the physical aspect of a relationship. Queer. Queer is an umbrella term reclaimed by some. We spoke last week. It used to be a bullying term, and now people use it as just an umbrella term. You heard me say it earlier. I'm a queer woman. I identify as queer. And that's just because I'm a little lazy sometimes. That's because it's way easier to say I'm queer than to say I identify as a bisexual, trans, femme, non-binary woman. And then to have everybody around me go, huh? So queer is just nice and easy. It also is, it's really, it's a great way for the queer community to also beacon to each other, signal to each other. It's sort of like an inward. If you want to know if something is genuinely by the community and for the community, it's probably going to say something like queer. And if it is something like LGBTQ+, it might be big corporations. Because that has sort of been taken over by sort of marketing and capitalism. Sorry, I'm getting off topic. There's too many topics. Yes? Oh, thank you. Oh, yeah. I perspire a lot. My choir will tell you. And then there's demisexual. Attraction develops with an emotional bond. This person would need to feel very, very safe with the person. They would want to feel in love with the person before they were even able to consider a sexual attraction at all. So there's layers. Like I said, you don't have to be just one. And that's why things are on a spectrum. You get to sort of pick and choose. And maybe not pick and choose. And sort of just feel what's right. Next slide, please. So that concludes sexuality. Which, if we look at our little person, orientation/attraction, that's the heart. That's what we want. A term to describe sexual and/or romantic attraction towards each other. Next slide. Oh. What happened? Something weird happened. I can go off of this. Sorry that it's not in front of you, folks. Something happened with my copying and pasting. Gender terms. So we talked a little bit about cisgender last week. There was a question on what that means. Cis is the root word. It means cut or on either side, which refers to people who identify with the sex they were assigned at birth. Cisgender means that you identify as the sex you were assigned at birth. So when we are all born, we are all assigned a gender at birth. I was assigned male at birth. I don't identify with the gender I was assigned at birth. So I'm trans. But Scott over here was born male and identifies as male. He is cisgender. Quick question? Um, the question is it proper to say gender assigned at birth or sex assigned at birth? The proper term is sex assigned at birth. Sex assigned at birth. Yes? CIS, cisgender. Yeah, of course. All right. So we have cisgender, and then we have transgender, which means to go across. Transgender people do not identify as the sex assigned at birth. And then from there, trans, there's a whole umbrella underneath trans of how you can identify. You can identify as androgynous, which is identifying as sort of both male and female. You can identify as non-binary, which is neither male nor female. Funny enough, you can just say gender queer and leave it at that and have that be just either a placeholder or even the totalness of your identity, gender queer. We talked last week about intersex people who are not born with defined male or female genitalia, a mixture of the both. And those people often do not get to choose at birth what genitals they get to keep and how they get to live their lives. So they have often really interesting lived stories, lived experiences where they find out halfway through their lives that they were born intersex, and they can choose now how to deal with that. That's a whole topic if you'd like to talk about that later. Another gender identity that I'd like to bring up is two-spirit. This is something that you'll find in Native American communities, and I talked a bit about it in my sermon as well. There are third gender terms in a lot of different cultures, but two-spirit is the one that is most commonly used in Native American culture in America. And that is honoring that there is the spirit of not only a man, but a spirit of a woman that is acting through somebody's body. And they hold a very special and specific place in the culture. They're not othered, they're not pushed aside. There's a specific role for them, and they are often spiritual leaders and mentors to people. Yes? Yeah. Yeah. Asking for examples of each as we go through. Examples of a trans person. A trans person is somebody who was born male but wants to be female and identifies as female. A trans person is somebody who was born female but identifies as male. They were assigned female but identifies as male. Two spirits. Are you asking for examples of like people? Or
something that I can then relate to more specifically. Can I share an example?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Hi. So I have a friend who is trans, and first they were non-binary, and then in their journey they are trans. And it was a big decision. Do I go on hormone therapy? Do I not? And through, I think, one of my conversations with you or my friend, we came upon, is it appropriate to ever ask someone, did you have a top surgery or a bottom surgery? Like, no, that is very private. And so people can present different ways. Also, my friend that is trans, sometimes, even though they were assigned female at birth, they do wear dresses sometimes, and they embrace that mothering, and it's like kind of each day might be a little different. So one day might be a dress, one day might be suspenders. So that's an example.
Absolutely. I had a camp counselor growing up. I went to a gay leadership camp growing up. And this person, Mama J, was just very genderqueer. They wore lipstick and khakis and earrings, and they told us that some days they felt more boy, and some days they felt more girl, and some days they felt like their right arm was more girl and their left leg was more boy. And Mama J was having a little fun with us when they said that. But it can go that deep as far as listening to yourself, listening to your body, and knowing how it feels. There's a short video after this, I believe. Ready for it.
Four kinds of cheese, sprinkled in balsamic straight from Italy.
Wow! In my day, salads only had 2 ingredients. A rock-hard wedge of iceberg lettuce and a stinky old dried-up tomato.
Sorry, guys. I'm gonna have to eat fast. Alex is stopping by in a few minutes to work on our robotics project.
Alex, is that the girl with that weird dog? Or the boy with the hat with the wings that flap?
No, Uncle Jay. This is Alex.
Oh, okay, I remember. A very nice young, come to think of it, well, is Alex a boy or a girl?
Actually, Alex doesn't define themselves as boy or girl.
What else is there?
Back in your day, most people understood the world in terms of just boys and girls. But now, we know gender is more complex than that.
Wait, aren't we just talking about whether you're born with a or a hee?
When you're born, your sex is assigned in a medical way, but the sex listed on your birth certificate may not necessarily match your gender identity.
Gender identity is a person's inner experience of who they are in terms of gender, their deep personal sense of being male, female, a blend of both, or neither.
And while many people have a gender identity that's the same as their assigned birth sex of female or male, that's not always the case, because gender exists on a spectrum. Like transgender, which means a person whose gender identity is not consistent with their assigned birth sex. Non-binary, which means a person whose identity doesn't fall in the category of either male or female. And genderqueer or gender fluid, which means a person who does not identify themselves as having a specific gender at all.
Does gender identity have to do with being straight or gay?
Actually, no. Gender identity has to do with the way you feel about yourself, while sexual orientation is based on the way you feel toward others, the people you may or may not be attracted to.
You know, I really like Alex, and I can tell they're a good friend to you. But I'm still pretty confused about all of this.
That's okay. You don't have to fully understand someone to respect them. To start, try not to make any assumptions about a person's gender, and use the name and pronouns that they ask you to. Above all, be a friend or ally for people of all gender identities.
That's right, Mom. Oh, Alex is here. Come on in.
Hey, everyone.
Oh, hey, Alex. Care for some salad? The balsamic's right from Italy, you know.
So a very sweet conversation had over dinner. I hope that clears up some of the questions that we had, provided some nice visual. when it comes to gender. Anything goes, and there is a pronoun to go along with it. But before we go to pronouns, do we have a question? Yeah, of course.
I have a friend in his 30s, in her 30s now, actually, who I've known for a long time and just a wonderful friend, who confessed this way and said, "I'm a lesbian trapped in a man's body." And kind of, actually, because I knew this person so well, I went, I get it now. And that person now is trans, becoming a female. But I thought that was really helpful in this whole discussion, in coming. I mean, because you all of a sudden you go, bang. Yeah, it opened everything up. So that gender and attraction are their own things. Yeah.
That is a great way to put it. I'm a lesbian trapped in a man's body. So that person knew that they still, were attracted to women, but their gender identity wasn't lining up with it, right? It wasn't a man loving a woman, it was a woman loving a woman. They felt like they were trying to reconcile in their brain, no, I'm a lesbian, not a man. That's very cool. That's very cool. And yes, we have a Q&A session. So, and I just want to get through pronouns, and then we can do Q&A. So, next slide, please. So, we talked a bit about pronouns. A name is a word that is called a noun. A pronoun is a word we choose to refer to ourselves instead of our name. So we have she, her, he, him, they, them, and then there's some new ones, sie, them, sie, zer. Now we can use they, them, sie, them, sie, zer as singular. So these would refer. So my friend Shangela, Z is having a great time. My friend Carl, they are putting on a bake sale. My friend Ruby, he has a nice truck. Pronouns are really, really important. They're just as important as somebody's name, because it's the word that we use to replace their name. All right. Did everyone have a moment to write down their questions? If you would also, so next slide, please, next slide. If you'd like to write down your questions, you can. That's okay. The last thing I wanted to talk about before the Q&A session. We talked a little bit last week on what does it mean to be an ally. So this is the ABCs of the LGBTQIAs. We learned that A means a lot of different things, right? A also means ally. You are included in the LGBTQIA. Allies are people who stand with queer folk in solidarity. So I created like 7 ways to be a good ally. Listen and learn, respect pronouns and identities, speak up, support publicly and privately, create inclusive spaces, reflect and grow, and lead with love. And to go over those one by one. Listen and learn, stay curious and not defensive. Keep learning from LGBTQ voices. You guys are doing great. You're here right now learning. Respect pronouns and identities. Use people's names and pronouns correctly. Apologize simply if you slip. That's very important. What happens in a social setting when you get someone's pronouns incorrect? It can hurt, yes, but please only apologize briefly, fix the pronoun, and move on with the sentence. It does not need to be a big thing, because when you make it a big thing, then, does anyone want to role play with me very quickly? Jen, will you role play with me very quickly? Jen, I'm gonna get your pronoun wrong, okay? Jen, how are you?
I'm okay, thanks.
You're doing good?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't he look good? He. Oh, no. She. Oh, I'm so sorry, Jen. I shouldn't be doing that. I know that your pronoun is she, right? It's she, yes?
Yeah, it's okay.
I don't know why I didn't get that right. I mean, I need to be better about that. I really need to.
You're making this very awkward now.
Well, I'm making it awkward, but I'm also making it Jen's job to make me feel better. Making the maybe trans person here, making it their job to make me feel better about my mess up. When really it was just a small moment, and we can just keep it small and keep it moving. Thank you so much, Jen, she, her. But oftentimes people will, start to profusely apologize, and then it puts me in the position to make you feel better about yourself, when really we should, still be trying to help the person who is misgendered being using the wrong pronoun, right? So just apologize simply if you slip up. Speak up. Challenge unkind comments or jokes. Silence can sound like agreement. I think that one speaks for itself. Support publicly and privately. I really loved how we all showed up for Beaverton Pride and for Portland Pride. Things like that, finding ways to get out in the community and to support just our neighbors, our queer neighbors around us. The more we can do that, the more that we're gonna improve our allyship. Create inclusive spaces. We're doing that right here. Reflect and grow. I mentioned earlier that this is frustrating. Learning is frustrating. Learning new concepts is frustrating. You will be frustrated in the future and as you learn and grow. So it's important to reflect and to take note of your biases and to check in with yourself. How did I show up in that space today? Did I make that person feel comfortable? Ask yourself those questions. And lead with love. Allyship is ongoing. Show kindness in action every day.
Can I give 2 examples of speaking up?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so one, I was working for an all-online school, and I was running a lot of meetings with staff members and families, and a lot of the kids in this all-online school were queer because they were bullied at their schools. And so I would model at the beginning of the meeting, "Hi, I'm Jen, I'm the counselor, I use she, her pronouns." And then if someone forgot, like, "Oh, what pronouns would you like?" And that just meant the world to the students. And then over time, I found that certain teachers kept misgendering the student or a staff member, and really advocating for my friend, for my staff member to the administration. Like, my friend is not feeling safe because their pronouns are not being respected in this online meeting, especially by an administrator. So that was a way that as a friend I could speak up, and as a leader I could model and remind in the moment, like, "Oh, you mean he, totally fine, let's just move on," and try to not make it a big deal, but just like simply correct. And then my other example was my friend, I brought them to the ER recently, and I was helping them check in. And I said, "Hey, here's my friend. They're like, what's their name? I'm like, do you need their legal name or their chosen name? And they said, legal name. So I gave the legal name. I said, but they go by this name, and please mark that on the chart. And they go by he, him pronouns. And so everyone that day, my friend felt so validated. And they said, thank you for taking that onus off of me. Like, for once, I didn't have to advocate for myself. So that's just a practical way.
Absolutely. And one way that I was doing that in college, I was director of a small group, and I would introduce every rehearsal with, hello, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. And I didn't think anyone liked it because nobody laughed. But I got a note about halfway through the year about how much it meant to somebody that I was saying that, and that they could hear that I was inviting them into the room, you know? So little things matter.
Okay, we're gonna switch off the recording and go to Q&A real soon. So then we'll get to your question. And I wanted to throw in 2 comments before we turn on the recording, because if you're still confused about these things and having difficulty with them,